and it all started with a phone call. Karen Anderson, my mother-in-law, called Friday night and said she couldn't reach her daughter and invited us to visit. Of course, I accepted the invitation. Frankly, I enjoyed these trips because Karen was a very good cook, and my wife and I didn't have much time for that. My wife, Emily, didn't need much convincing either. She had long wanted to visit her mother and take a break from the hustle and bustle of the city. So by Sunday morning, we were on our way to her mom's house. Karen lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment. Despite her 53 years, she was very attractive. She was an energetic woman who was rarely seen just lazing around. Emily had once told me that her mother had divorced her father long ago and hadn't dated a man since. Perhaps that was why she was always busy. As I expected, Karen cooked an amazing dinner, including my favorite pie. After the meal, we sat around the table and chatted about life. After a couple hours, Karen sent us to relax on the couch in the living room while she got busy cleaning up the kitchen. Emily was apparently so tired from the trip that she fell asleep almost immediately. I, on the other hand, couldn't fall asleep. I decided to offer Karen some help. Maybe I needed to fix a door or change a light bulb. After all, there wasn't a man around to do those things. But when I reached the kitchen, Karen wasn't there. I was about to turn back when I heard a conversation coming from her bedroom. Probably talking to someone on the phone, I thought. It seemed like normal chatter, but something made me stop and listen, and I was quite surprised at what I heard. Karen was talking about a man. From what I could tell, she liked him a lot. I stood at her door for a few more minutes, contemplating whether to leave, when suddenly I heard my name. Alex is very attractive, but I can't do that to my daughter. I was stunned. What was she talking about? How could she not do something to her daughter? And wait, did she like me? A million questions raced through my mind. I started remembering little moments, like when Karen shyly mentioned that she baked a cake just for me. Or when she'd asked me to come over a couple times to fix a leaky faucet, but I couldn't because I was working late and Emily needed to be picked up from the salon. My thoughts were interrupted again when I heard Karen say, "But I don't think he sees me as a woman at all. Someone else must have been talking to her." Because after that, Karen fell silent. I couldn't listen any longer. I had heard too much. I went back to the couch and lay down next to Emily, but I couldn't fall asleep. There were too many questions in my head. Alex is very attractive, but I can't do that to my daughter. What did she mean? Did she really like me? None of it made sense. I eventually fell asleep with these thoughts. When I woke up the next morning, I remembered my dream clearly. It was unusual for me. It had been about me and Karen. And let's just say it was the kind of dream I was a little ashamed to remember. That overheard conversation must have affected me more than I realized. When I woke up, Emily had already left and I headed for the kitchen. Karen and Emily were drinking tea and eating pancakes, chatting away as I walked in. As soon as Karen saw me, she immediately jumped up to make me coffee while chatting with her daughter. It was the first time I really got a good look at Karen. She was petite, with a great figure, and her long black hair was neatly braided. She didn't look 52 at all. She was an energetic young woman. And why didn't she have a man? Emily's cell phone rang and she went into the other room to answer it. I continued to watch Karen. I felt like I was seeing her for the first time. She seemed different, or maybe I was looking at her differently. At that moment, Karen turned around, caught my frozen gaze, and looked confused. She seemed to know exactly what I was thinking. "Alex, how do you like your coffee?" she asked, trying to diffuse the tense situation. "Very good, Karen," I replied with a smile. I decided to make a joke and Karen blushed again and went back to her chores. Soon Emily returned from her call and informed me that she had to rush to work to sign some contract. Karen protested, asking why she had to work on Sunday, but Emily couldn't be persuaded. Her job was important, especially since she had recently been promoted, so she often had to work weekends. Emily quickly left in a cab for work, promising to be back for dinner and giving Karen and me a kiss on the cheek. I stayed in the kitchen, sipping coffee and eating pancakes, occasionally glancing at Karen and thinking about the conversation from the night before. After finishing my coffee, I thanked Karen and lay down on the couch in front of the TV, eventually dozing off. I woke up to a phone call. Some bank was doing a survey, but I didn't care and hung up. The house was quiet except for the faint sound of water splashing in the bathroom. I glanced at the clock. It was 3:30. Emily wasn't back yet, which meant Karen must be in the bathroom. For some reason, I felt like peeking at her. I quietly approached the bathroom and noticed that the door was not fully closed, but only slightly ajar. Karen was sitting with her back to me, scrubbing her shoulders with a washcloth. Her hair was tied up in a bun, and her bare shoulders were covered with the washcloth. Even from the back, her figure looked exquisite. It looked like a young woman was bathing in the tub, and I couldn't stop myself from wanting to see more. Losing my head from inappropriate thoughts, I stood there, mesmerized. And then Karen turned around and saw me looking at her. I was at a loss for words. Her face was beautiful, her eyes widened with surprise, and her lips slightly open. We stared at each other in silence for what seemed like an eternity. She slowly soaped the washcloth again, running it over her long, slender neck and graceful arms, and then lower. Finally, she turned fully to me and asked, "Would you mind rubbing my back?" Without saying a word, I went into the bathroom, took the washcloth from her, and began gently rubbing her back. I don't know why, but it gave me great pleasure. A wave of desire swept over me, and when Karen turned and kissed me, I couldn't hold back any longer. My whole body trembled with anticipation. What happened next was something I'll never forget. When Emily came home from work, Karen and I were sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea and eating the most delicious cakes I'd ever tasted.